and welcome to another TecHome Builder webcast. Our topic today is building a connected and productive tech home. Very much a topic of the moment. And our guest, second time appearance, it's like the Saturday Night Live, they keep score. You're at the top of the list in our young webcast series, Mike. Second time is Mike Grubb, who's VP of Marketing with Legran Dev. And today, here's just an overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about a little bit about Mike and Legrand for starters, but then we're going to get into some of the common applications that are drawing on a lot of network connectivity. Today's stuff, maybe a little look at what's coming down the line, because it's always an evolving picture there. We're going to talk about what some of the common simultaneous streams are, and then given that, really try to tackle what would be good, better, best packages that builders should be including. And Mike and I talked a little bit before this session, and to me, there's like the stuff that the builder puts in the home with the assistance of trade contractors, the hardware, both hardwired and wireless. But we have to also, I think, own the fact that the right connectivity package from the internet service provider needs to be put onto that network to really give the user the experience and the reliability on the network that we need. So we're going to try to tackle those two topics together in good, better, best. And that's it. That's our focus for the day. We're going to keep this shorter than usual because the AC has been turned off here, and I will be a sweaty mess if we go longer than 25 minutes. All right, so with that, Mike, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing with Legrand these days, and your background in the industry.
Sure. So currently, I'm VP of Marketing for Legran Dev, and that includes the 7 brands of Legran Dev. So that's brands like Luxol, Chief, Daylight, Sanus. I'm losing my mind here. Nuvo. Middle Atlantic Products, and I think I'm missing one. But
did you hit Luxol?
I did. I think I did. If I didn't, Luxol's part of that. But yeah, so VP of Marketing for the collective 7, but focused on Luxol and Nuvo. But background includes my background of custom installation. So I had my own business back in 2000 for 7 years. So well aware of the needs of the integrator and being able to support them and what their efforts are. But then also I worked as a construction manager for a production builder. So I have an idea of kind of what's needed there as well, and how to be able to support the builder from that perspective as well, and how to be able to guide that conversation in even today's conversation.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Legrand. Maybe you could give some of the big picture and use a French accent, because you're a big French owned or French publicly traded conglomerate, but take us down in the funnel from the big picture and really focus in then on the product and kind of the application leadership in this whole network infrastructure side of things.
Sure. Well, I think it's important also to just recap. We are in this coronavirus pandemic era right now, and there's a lot of that's changed, in our lives, and a lot of that also relates to how we work, how we learn, how we entertain. I mean, there's so much more of a difference now than there was before, and that's shifted to how we can help prepare families and buyers and things like that for just for the marketplace. So as we look at what Legrand has to offer for not only the builders but the buyers that buy from the builders, is I think the infrastructure that we can help educate and make them aware of. This is really what's needed nowadays as we move through these times, and kind of what's coming after. Yeah. So So as we prepare for not only the infrastructure of making sure the wires are in place to help prepare for that, I think what we want is a reliable network. What we want is a reliable connected home. So
Yeah.
with that reliable connected home, it starts with the foundation of the network.
Yeah.
So the network as the foundation.
Yeah.
Like you just
So,
mentioned,
so
we talked.
what do you guys specifically? What do you all manufacture in that network infrastructure? Give me a little bit of
Mhm.
the product rundown. I know there's a gazillion SKUs,
Sure.
but let's talk a little bit about the apparatus, the head end sort of stuff, the enclosures,
Hmm.
the wiring devices out at the edge. You were part of the Luxel incorporation a few years ago, which really brought the wireless piece to the fore as well. Just give us a little rundown of the stuff.
Sure, and I guess we look at that from a solutions perspective, because if we just talk about products and parts all day, it doesn't really make sense. So, from a solution perspective, we have the networking products, which include access point and routers and network switches and controllable power products called PDUs, and then we combine those with things like a Wi-Fi transparent enclosure that would be inset into a wall, so it would be closed off flush with a wall, and things can be closed away in that for distribution of signals, for connectivity, whether it's telephone or it's TV or it's different various things that we can enclose into those access points and routers and things like that, or even modems in those enclosures, so that people don't have to have those things out on cabinets, out on furniture, things like that. So it allows for that convenience. Audio, streaming audio products, because people love to be able to have their music, and now it's much more easy with streaming audio. So we've got those types of products as well. Things to help combine that those infrastructure pieces with now TVs, whether it's TVs on stands and they want to incorporate sound bars, TVs on the wall for mounts, small rack systems when they want to be able to put it into a cabinet or into a closet. There's so much that we can offer as a solution from Legrand, so that it makes it easier not only for the builder to provide as a infrastructure for the home buyer, but for that convenience for that home buyer and that person that moving in the home.
Now, I mean, it's a great point. The foundation of the company is really infrastructure. When Legrand made their first buy in the U.S., which was on Q, that was a structured wiring company principally at the time, but putting the collection of brands together that you went through, the 7 brands, really gets you beyond infrastructure to some of the active components that are riding on that network, and to these accessories out at the edge that are housing the devices that benefit from the infrastructure. So you guys certainly are a kind of a full-fledged solution provider in terms of the product set. I did also want to just touch on the history on the builder partnership side of things with Legrand. And maybe I know some of the earlier history even better than you, Mike, because I
Sure.
worked so closely with the OnQ guys,
Mm-hmm.
even pre-Legrand acquisition. And what I would say, and you can add commentary or talk more about today's stuff, but Legrand has always been, one of the most dedicated electronics and electrical products manufacturers for the builder channel. They've had dedicated sales and service teams and marketing efforts and kind of full process supports for many years for the builder, and have one of the, it's not a huge team, but they've got a team of really professional folks who are dedicated to these channel relationships with the builder. So, I will just make the observation, having spent too much time working in this space, that you're kind of a Hall of Fame level brand with the builder as technology pertains. And I don't know whether you want to embellish on that with
Sure.
whatever's going on at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, it really is good to point out that you talk about the Hall of Fame, that builders have that longstanding relationship with Legrand because of some of the products that we've had in the market and really support the need of, just basic necessities or even just, necessities within the home, from the light switches and the plugs of the Radiant collection, Adorn collection, things like that, now to the controllable lighting. So that's a mainstay with our builders. The OnQ brand, and by the way, the when I say Legrand AV, it's definitely related to some of those AV brands, and then those Radiant and Legrand switches that are other parts of the business, different divisions, are still a big support of that. So Legrand is, if some people don't know, is a massive company that has holds in the industrial, in the commercial and residential and IT business for a lot of needs. So there's a great support there.
Yeah. So let's get to the meat of the topic now that we've got some background on who you and Legrand are, and it's really about bandwidth consumption and the fact that we're in an era of hyper use. But let's kind of maybe walk through some of these and try to understand technically what sort of bandwidth consumption goes with. There's regular internet usage, which is certainly, there's a lot of rich media and streaming even within just a laptop in the network. But video conferencing, that we're doing right now has obviously really ramped up here since the COVID arrival. Streaming entertainment consumption. So I don't have little kids in my house. I don't have my kids in my house at all, but I'm sure gaming is, and with kids kind of separated from each other, gaming is on the rise. And then we've got this whole world of surveillance, whether that's a video doorbell or exterior and interior cameras that are usually riding on the Wi-Fi. Can you give us an idea of and even put some metrics on what the consumption is of bandwidth for those different applications?
Sure. I think first it's good to understand, I think, the different levels of internet service providers, the packages that are available. And, builders are well aware of some of those relationships because those internet service providers are already approaching them and offering different packages. But there's different levels of service. There's DSL, there's cable modem, there's different types of, levels of service. And even within that, there's different packages. So it's good to understand what those are, but then it's also good to make sure you make the builders make the right decision on the types of service that are offered to their buyers. Yeah. So looking at that, I think that there's a good understanding of, you mentioned, kids in the home and whether it's gaming or it's distance learning, they're learning from home as well. And I think that there's different use cases that we can base our assumptions off of and kind of throw out that we'll have a document for as well for all the builders on the call, for them to understand, here's some different use cases. Here's the different levels of service that may be required at these use cases, and here's the type of coverage that would be required in different square footage types homes, right, whether it's 2,000 up to 4,000, whatever it might be. Yeah. So I think as we look at that and we say, okay, if there's children in the home, well, let's start with a basic. Let's start with a basic user and as a use case. So we've got, let's just call them a couple. We have a couple at home and they're both working from home. So they both do video conferencing. They both may be streaming audio to be able to keep their sanity levels kind of level. So they're doing streaming audio for music. They're doing some video conferencing for their work, and they're also doing their email. And let's say they have, like you mentioned, like a Ring doorbell as an example, or a video call doorbell. Some of those things require certain levels of performance. So we look at email, we look at video conferencing, we look at streaming audio, and then maybe after hours they've got some of the 4K TV streaming video as well. So at that basic level user, what I would recommend is a minimum of a 50 meg plan. So that's a 50 megabyte plan. But I think what we need to understand with that too, and when I talk about all plans, a lot of these plans are shared service. So it's shared among the community that you live in. So sometimes you don't get that 50 megabit performance out of that. You may get 20 megabit, you may get 30 megabit. But so it's good to understand, if you choose a 50 megabit plan, you may not always get that 50 megabit plan when the demand is highest. So have that as consideration.
Yeah. Are there ways to purchase guaranteed bandwidth versus shared, or is it depends on the ISP?
It depends on the ISP, and typically in residential, there's not a selective type of service that allows you for that guaranteed.
Yeah.
Sometimes
if you go up the spectrum and it's shared, you have higher reliability. Let's say you have 100 plan and it's shared, you have much higher probability you're going to get at least 50.
Yeah, you have a higher headroom. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, when even as we talk about later, we talk about some of those higher plans, like let's say a gigabit plan. Some of those gigabit plans actually perform to a gigabit the majority of the time, majority, if not all the time. But, as we look at that basic user, and let's talk about a Wi-Fi coverage and a network performance. We always want to recommend that builders wire in certain things. That way there's a performance level that's not taken away from some of those devices or the bandwidth available in the home. So if you have computers, it's always best to hardwire the computers. If you have TVs that are performing at 4K, and we mentioned earlier 8K. So as we look at some of those intense bandwidth requirements, we want to make sure some of those things are hardwired in. So TV locations, computer locations are going to be key for those things. But we also know that Wi-Fi is a necessity in a living environment. So we've got access points that provide that Wi-Fi to coverage to be able to cover the home, and routers that perform that Wi-Fi coverage as well. So at a basic level for that 50 megabit plan and that basic user, even stepping up to 100 megabit plan, as you kind of touched on, we've got an access point and a router, and then based on their needs, we can have a small network switch included in that. And typically things like the router and the access network switch and the modem and other types of devices can be included in that in-wall enclosure. So it's all kept away, it's all nice and tidy, and then an access point that's on a ceiling, that's unobstructive, that's unobtrusive as well, that can perform that Wi-Fi coverage.
Yeah. So that's great. That takes care of the basic. Mm-hmm. Where are we going from there? What do you see as a pretty common next step of consumption in the package?
I think next step would be, let's call them a family of three, and we've got a family of three with a child, and that child is now distance learning, so they're learning from home. We've got, again, those parents that are supporting their child learning from home as well as working from home, so they've got just a greater bandwidth need. And I think things to consider about that is whether it's gaming or they're also on a video conference call, because typically the children check in with their classroom, check in with their teachers on a periodic basis. So now you've got 3 video conferences going on. You've got music streaming. You've got other things that are happening. So you got a greater bandwidth requirement in that home. So if you're at 100 megabit plus, then that's going to support more of that, as well as, I think that just to understand the Wi-Fi coverage and the Wi-Fi need of that and the network need of that. So we step up to a little bit bigger router, and we step up to access point that can cover the home as well. And then we have, again, those considerations of the hardwired locations to those intense bandwidth requirement devices, like the gaming system and the computers, like I mentioned, and the TV locations, like I mentioned as well.
Yeah, I think that the TV piece is something that's overlooked a lot. I think a lot of the newly constructed homes, the design where there would be a hardwired, connection, an outlet, is typically the thought process is around a computer connection, and not really recognizing that TVs are probably streaming more content than they're getting off of a cable box or satellite box these days, and that's probably a missed need in a lot of the designs from a new construction standpoint. If there's going to be power and coax runs for the TV to an above the mantle location or other wall locations in rooms beyond the great room, there really needs to be a hardwired internet connection there. Otherwise, we're going to have these bandwidth hogs, crowding out everything else on the wireless network, and either other stuff's going to drop or you're going to have degraded video performance when you go wireless.
When you talk about that, I see the experience. So, the builder wants to provide the best experience that they can for their home buyer. So I think that those are important things to consider and make sure that they're including to be able to have that better experience.
Yeah. So you got good, better. I mean, do you have a best for us, or are we just going to do good, better?
No. I think it's good to touch on that, because the awareness of there's not just a couple solutions, but there are multiple solutions, and these are just use cases. I think that every home buyer, every person that moves into a space may want to customize, and that's kind of the nature of the custom installation. Is everything isn't always the same. You may have packages, you may have use cases, but there's always ways to be able to meet the specific needs of the home buyers, and in that process as well. So that best that we can talk about is, let's say now it's a bigger family. Now it's I don't want to say Brady Bunch, but we've got parents, we've got multiple kids in the home, and they're also, whether it's a hybrid distance learning, or it's some areas are, not going back to school yet. So they've got multiple children in the home that are distance learning, and they're doing their Zoom calls with their teachers in their class, but they're also doing their research, they're doing their homework, they're doing the majority of everything that they're doing online.
Well, you can have adult children in the home too, who are doing work from home. So,
and that's a bit more intense as well. Let's say the college student, is going to have a bit more higher requirements than maybe that elementary, junior high, or high school student. So there are those types of needs. So now you've got a bigger need for not only service level of the ISP. Let's say that they have a gigabit available, and that's going to be best in this scenario, because the gigabit level of service, and we have routers to be able to support that. We've got network switches to be able to support all those connected devices as well, and they've got the cameras that they need to pull up periodically, and do those types of things. So there's definitely those products to be able to support a good, better, best, and then customization from there, as well as, I think, the consideration of those things that we talked about that are really points that that should be considered highly and or done as a necessity, which are those hardwired locations and the consideration of those packages of ISP.
Yeah, we're kind of back to the future on the hardwired side of things, right? And everyone became so enamored of wireless, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
We all love, untethered signal, but for a lot of the applications that are emerging, and if you want quality connections, you want quality video connections that are high definition, you're really asking for trouble if you're all wireless, and more hardwired runs seem to be kind of in our future here. You and I were talking, and we're gonna work on a little table that will simplify some of this and put the numbers in perspective. I think as we think about really doing the best job for the occupants of the home, we have to help them. I think make good decisions on these service packages. I know you guys are in the hardware business, but like if somebody's making a decision between a gig and 100, and it ends up being a few $100s a year to go to a gig versus 100, but they're power users, they're at the better or best level of consumption, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? Am I going to save a few $100s a year on my service package to be grainy, breaking up, shutting down on Microsoft Teams, when this has become mission critical for me and my family? It's I think we have to help the buyers understand what investment is appropriate for them. Because I think when you take that service plan decision and you look at it kind of just based on the way the ISP puts it forward to you, you're like, well, why would I need that thing? But you got to think through use case, you got to think through consumption, you got to think about that value to you in terms of what are you trying to accomplish on the network.
Absolutely. We talk about, some of that infrastructure. We talk about, the performance levels that are needed. We talk about, the ISP that's coming in to making sure that you're meeting the need of that speed and that bandwidth requirement. But then there's also, the big talk about what's happening now with mesh, and mesh is a big word out in the industry, and builders are saying, well, I don't need a wire for mesh. Those points are true, but I think as we talk about, as we say, and I think anybody in the networking world will say, your best performance is going to be over a hardwired connection, because there's also interference in the home. There's different types of devices and different types of construction materials that provide interference or blocking signals. But to speak to that mesh point, we have a product and a solution that's going to be coming out at the end of next month that is also a mesh product that performs to that gigabit level, that when you can't run a wire, this is a solution. But again, when you can run wires, it's always best to run those wires.
Yeah, cool. So where can builders who are interested in going deeper on this topic area, where can we steer them in terms of your Legrand information sources?
Sure. So I think a good way to be able to understand that is to go to legrandav.com, and from there you can go in and see all the brands that I referenced, and then from a specific, if you wanted to dive down deeper and get into some of the education things as well as product specific guidance, luxel.com is a good way to go. And by the way, we do have, you mentioned partnerships, builder partnerships. We do have a person on the builder team that's, his focus is in the builder partnerships, so that for them to be able to have somebody to work with specifically and guide them on conversations and present options to them is great. And that person is Chris Sherman.
Okay. All right. And and we'll also try to feature information like this at TechHomeBuilder.com in our probably in our research and guides section. I think just to kind of wrap it up, I really want to push for a holistic approach from builders to, maybe you're not selling the bandwidth, the internet service itself, but I think to give solid recommendations about the pairing of the service with the hardware is an important best practice, because you don't want somebody to make a big investment in hardware and then have too thin of a pipe coming in there, because they're not going to get the results that they think that they should. So I think that's an important responsibility. And then I'm going to challenge you, Mike. I always issue challenges on these webcasts, so you better watch out. You really don't want to be, like Tom Hanks with your 14 appearances on Saturday Night Live. You just get challenges. But it's like, we got to come up with some sexy names for this stuff, like this good, better, best packages. I remember back when structured wiring was taking off for builders, and it was internet. I mean, this sounds like a long time ago because it was a long time ago. It was like internet ready house. It was a big thing back then, but it was a moniker that people could get their hands around. So I think we need to maybe come up with some terminology, some sloganizing around this so that it becomes a more simple and uniform sale that, like, hey, I got the good, better, best isn't going to cut it, right? Because that's too obviously merchandising. That's the way we should understand it as marketers, as sellers, but we have to come up with some sort of consumer-centric terminology around these package sets that make it easy to sell, that make the benefit more obvious to the user. The need is clearly there. The ability to deliver is clearly there. Is kind of just take those next steps really on the marketing and merchandising side of things. So challenge to you, Mike.
Accepted. Okay. One of the things that I do want to touch on too, just as a finish to that, is Wi-Fi has really become the fourth utility. So that's a good thing to understand and position, with the builders, with the buyers of the homes, that it's not just an addition after you move in. It's really something that should be included in the home as the fourth utility.
Yeah. Bandwidth, not just Wi-Fi, because we got those hardwired ones. I mean, we do need to think about how we want to characterize that. I like it as a utility. I like it as a must-have conversation, because I really do think it's going to affect, folks' enjoyment levels and convenience and productivity, right? We've talked that we added that as the seventh central benefit of the TecHome is productivity. It's going to affect productivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we got to figure out a way to make it either great package included standard or deep discussion about what are we going to do about your network, because there's too much writing on it to make a bad pun.
Yeah. The builder that I worked for, the production builder, was big on NPS scores, and that's why I kind of refer back to the experience, because
that's net promoter scores.
Net promoters. Thank you. Net promoter scores. So that experience and that point of, are you happy with your home? Are you going to recommend your friends to make a purchase with this builder as well? That experience really goes a long way, and this is part of that experience.
Cool. Well, good conversation. Thanks for making time for us. And we'll see you next time on the webcast series. Take care.
Thanks, John.